And a good Labor Day Monday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in for a look at your extended forecast. It's going to be a pretty tame and a pretty mild 7-day forecast that we'll talk about. We do have a few days that have some better shots at rain than others, but overall your week will be characterized by a slight warming trend with your high temperatures. But it is the first day of a new month, so let's go ahead and tally up the month of August, which was a very wet month. You can take a look at all of these days that we recorded some form of rainfall at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. Now, there were 2 days that really did encompass most of the rainfall, and that would have been right here. I think that is August 22nd, where we recorded nearly 3 inches of rain. And then on the 3rd day of August, we recorded about 2.5 inches of rain. So obviously these dots were good enough to be in the very wet category, and we stayed there for quite some time. In total, the month of August had just over 10 inches of rainfall, 10.27 inches to be exact. And obviously it says so far, but now we've crossed over into the 1st of September. So we have August 31st tally for rainfall, which we didn't record anything in the way of rainfall yesterday. On average, we typically get just over 4 inches of rain in the month of August all time, but the record is definitely a very big outlier. Now, I have showed this graphic very recently. I guess I was just looking at the wrong number because I did some double checking, and the record actually stands at 20.5 inches of rain back in 1928. So obviously probably our fair share of some flooding conditions back there, getting to be almost 100 years ago. But the total I had for the record for the month of August all time was somewhere around 12 inches of rainfall. Don't know where I got that number from, but this is the correct record for the most rainfall we've ever received in the month of August since we started taking records back in the late 1800s. And we got about halfway there, but still over 6 inches above where we should be for the month of August. So that's where you will see this number right here in a very, very large green box. Over 6 inches above what we normally see in the month of August for rainfall. So it makes sense that we're hovering somewhere around 7 inches above where we should be for the year of 2025 as a whole. We were hovering well above average after the month of June, but a very dry July did put our numbers a lot closer back down to average. And then, of course, with about 6 inches of rain over what we normally get in the month of August, that's going to give us a very, very nice cushion. I don't even know the last time I saw that number that far above average for a calendar year. 2024, we were normally below average for quite some time, but 7 inches above where we should be at this point of year. We could go through another stretch like we had last year. After Hurricane Helene, I think we went almost the entire month of October without receiving rainfall until maybe the very last day of October. So we could go through a stretch that long and still probably see that number would be above average. But this is as of August 31st. And the good news is we do have a relatively dry stretch of weather as we go into the next 7 days. So like I said, tame and mild in terms of the temperatures not being as warm as they could be. And we're not really talking about any big weather influences, but we'll talk about what will pertain to your forecasts and kind of break down your Labor Day forecast for all the fun that you're trying to squeeze into the very end of your 3-day weekend. A few midweek rain chances, and they are very slim. I'll go ahead and give you a bit of a spoiler alert on that. And it does look like we will finally see a warming trend back into the 90s. But note what I put after that. Very briefly, it doesn't look like we're going to stay in the 90s very long whatsoever. So it's been a story of some mostly sunny skies so far this morning. Taking another walk around the quad here just shy of the 11 a.m. hour. Plenty of blue sky across all 4 of our sky cams, some higher level cloud cover, and that's not doing a very good job of blocking any sunshine. So we are seeing the numbers gradually warm up, but still in the lower 70s. It doesn't look like anyone's quite holding on into the upper 60s anymore, but this is still very pleasant to walk out the door to. Somewhere around 70, maybe to 74 at the warmest. I think 74 in Gordon and Sparta is the warmest temperature that we see here in Central Georgia. So how does that match up with all of our neighboring states to the west, to the south, up to the north? Well, you can see that the eastern half of the United States still kind of in the stretch of weather where below average temperatures are the normal. How about 68 still in Lexington, 64 up in Indianapolis and over into St. Louis, 72 in Charleston, 74 over in Montgomery. So we're pretty similar to the temperatures that we do have amongst Alabama and South Carolina. But note this, you can see this breeze coming in from the north and the northeast, and obviously this green shade that does follow it. Areas in the Appalachian Mountains are definitely a little bit cooler than we are here in central Georgia, but we are continuing to see that green color try to push down into central Georgia, and is still pretty widespread, especially across the north and northeast portion of the state of Georgia. As you go down into Florida, 82 degrees in Orlando, 83 in New Orleans, 82 down in Laredo. New Orleans always has been really, for the past week or so, the warmest temperature that we can find here in the eastern United States. And once again, 83 degrees does take the cake for that number, but very thankfully we're not seeing any numbers in the upper 80s or even the low 90s over in the eastern United States, because that's what we were dealing with just a couple of weeks ago. And along with that, a couple of weeks ago, we had plenty of shades of that dark green color. Even at the beginning of the weekend, we had some patchy areas with some dew point temperatures somewhere in the low 70s. Well, right now it's been a dividing line of the upper 50s and the low 60s, good enough for widespread light green and even some areas of no color the farther east that you travel, even building into our southeasternmost counties. How about that? Dew point temperature of 55 degrees in Eastman, in McRae, and all the way down to Toombs County in Vidalia. And then you will see a couple of upper 50s mixed in with some 60s. 63 at the warmest for our dew point temperature in Gordon, and then down into Sumter County in Americus. Not too bad whatsoever. So the humidity levels all across the southeast are much more tame and definitely a lot more bearable. It's the farther west that you travel that you can start to see some patchy areas of dark green, especially right over here west of Montgomery. This could be a bit of an error, kind of like what we were talking about with Vidalia, not recording anything in the way of dew point temperatures a couple of weeks ago. Back into Mississippi, more patchy areas of some muggier air, and especially down towards the south in the Florida Peninsula. That's not too atypical. We typically see Florida hanging around with the humidity just about each and every day this time of year, because most of those frontal boundaries that pass through don't necessarily go as far down towards the very tip of the Florida Peninsula. But you can see there is a lot of drier air in the northern portion of the state, even portions of the Panhandle back over to Pensacola and Destin. Panama City has a patchy area of that sticky air. But this area of no color, you can continue to see it building down from the north and the northeast. It definitely looks like there's an error over here just outside of Charleston. That's where you're actually getting a very definitive area of no color whatsoever, probably just some sensor reading issues. And there was a lot of flooding over the past couple of days in the Charleston area, so I would imagine that they've had some weather events that are maybe causing some mishaps with some of their current condition readings. But this breeze from the north and the northeast continues to push this slightly drier air into our forecast. So right now your feels like temperatures, they're going to be exactly what they actually read on the temperature map. We're not seeing an inflation in that positive direction, still hanging out in the lower 70s. Feels like 75 at the most in Butler, maybe up into Forsyth. Those are just going to be your areas farther over to the west that aren't feeling the impacts of that slightly drier air as much over towards the east. So the winds, they are quite breezy and quite gusty here at this hour already. We have a very prominent wedge setup. So when we talk about that wedge setup, it's going to be winds coming in from the north and the northeast, and we'll go over what feature is exactly causing that in just a little bit. But it causes the Appalachian Mountains to kind of act as a blocking mechanism. So it's going to guide cooler and drier air from the north and the northeast all the way down here into the state of Georgia. And obviously we talk about the wedge normally having a very drastic impact on some of the temperature profiles. We've seen it have about a 30-degree spread from our northernmost counties all the way down to our southernmost counties as of recently, but that's not really the case temperature-wise. It's just really making its presence known with some drier air specifically. But the winds will continue to be breezy over the next couple of hours. We'll go over when we could see those winds to start get a little bit less gusty, but how about a 17-mile-per-hour gust in Milledgeville, 18 miles per hour in Eastman, and a 24-mile-per-hour gust down in Vidalia. We're seeing them sustained anywhere from about 7 miles per hour to 16 or 17 miles per hour. So that little number in white on top of where the locator label is, That's actually going to be your sustained winds, what they're consistently blowing at. The number in the yellow that's a little bit bigger that you see up here around Milledgeville, just above the V, that's going to be your occasional wind gusts. And those occasional gusts can get up to 25 miles per hour throughout today. But I definitely think I underestimated the sustained winds. I should have gone with more of a range of about 5 to 15 miles per hour as opposed to just 5 to 10 miles per hour. But nonetheless, I did kind of reiterate the message very frequently over the course of this morning that it is going to be a breezy day, but you're going to pair those breezy conditions up with some slightly drier air and some temperatures that will continue to be below average. We're taking a look at yesterday's almanac first and foremost. We climbed to a high temperature of 85 degrees yesterday and probably had a bit more of a humid atmosphere than we have present as of right now. So maybe it made it feel somewhere around 86, 87, maybe even 88 degrees. All of those numbers I did just mention, though, below the average of 91 degrees yesterday. Now, 61 is definitely below average, 69 our average low temperature this time of year. But take a look at this. Your low, record low, back in 1986 of 59 degrees. We did not come too far off of matching that number, just 2 degrees above it. Nowhere near this record high of 99 degrees, but it's very refreshing to at least see a high temperature record below the 100-degree mark. So that's indicating that we're moving into a cooler portion of the year. We're in those months that end in BER, those Burr months, and that's going to be the start of meteorological fall, which actually got kicked off today, and it will go for the entire month of September, October, and through November before December 1st will mark the beginning of meteorological winter. Your departure of rain, we already talked about that, 7 inches above average. Sunrise yesterday, 7:09, and sunset at 8 p.m. So let's see if we can go into, well, this is going to show you the sunrise today, which is at 7:10 a.m., or was at 7:10 a.m. rather, I should say. We'll have to do some research, and today could be the first time we see the sunset before the 8 p.m. hour. So once again, sunrise getting a little bit later, sunset is getting a little bit earlier. Those hours of daylight are going to continue to shrink until we get into the very first day of winter come in about 3, maybe 4-ish months, I would say. So some sunny and breezy for your Labor Day holiday. Pleasant, pleasant, pleasant. It's going to be a bit breezy, so note that, obviously, especially with things like cookouts going on today. Just make sure you contain that fire within your grill, and obviously anything that does kind of fall over such in nature, make sure that you have a good way to put that out if that is to happen. But overall, it's just going to be a pleasant afternoon. Partly cloudy skies, 83 for a high temperature, so even a little bit cooler than yesterday. But obviously we have to see how that humidity does influence the feels like numbers, and it's not going to really have much influence whatsoever. How about hanging out in the low 80s? 82 is as high as we get, and this graphic has stayed consistent all morning long. We typically see some fluctuation. Overall, it looks like our temperatures are going to hover around what they actually read. And then as we go into the evening hours, we're already feeling like the mid 70s by 8 p.m. tonight. So going to be a great night to maybe go out in the back or outdoors and go outside, maybe in that porch under some kind of covering, or just even enjoy the outside weather, because we don't have anything in the way of rain chances. I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm watching the UNC, the TCU game later on tonight, just enjoying that last little bit of the holiday weekend and these temperatures that are very much below average. How about this? As we progress through the nighttime hours, we're already feeling like the 60s, the upper 60s by 11 p.m., kind of giving you a bit of a foreshadowing that you could wake up to some cooler temperatures tomorrow. So tomorrow morning may very well be a day that I'm kind of telling you, maybe just grab the light jacket as you do head outside, but we'll talk about that more as we go forward. Satellite and radar picture. Anything we had in the way of cloud cover early this morning continues to thin out, and it's mainly present to the north of us. You can see some over there along the state line that's moving in the general vicinity of this area, but it doesn't look like we have anything in the way of rain. There were some light sprinkles around the metro Atlanta area this morning. That's about it. That's about the only rainfall that we've received so far. Now, I did mention we have this wedge set up, and what is it courtesy of? It's not going to have anything to do with this down here. Actually, the low pressure center, it's right there around Orlando. This is helping enhance the flow in that counterclockwise direction. So on the northern side of that, we kind of have winds that are still coming in from the north and the northeast, but this high pressure center all the way up in the New England area is actually helping influence our flow. And both of those, when you have that gradient between those high and low pressure centers, they kind of funnel winds down from that northeasterly direction, and they can go very widespread and very far away from the centers of that pressure down into Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and eventually Georgia. And we are the kind of the last state to be feeling the impacts of that wedge setup. And like I said, the Appalachian Mountains up here acting as a bit of a blocking mechanism. So if you kind of just keep my clicker right here, that flow continues to come through. Maybe it wants to go over towards the west a little bit more so once it gets towards the mountains. Well, the mountains block it, and it's going to continue to push that air down into the south and the southeast. Hopefully that was a bit of a good picture. Obviously, I know can't really necessarily show you the best, but maybe I'll make a graphic to kind of make that message a lot more clearly portrayed. So going into future view, 4 p.m. this afternoon, passing cloud cover here and there. Rain chances are pretty good up to the north and the northwest of us, but we don't see anything here in our neck of the woods. That goes all the way into Tuesday morning, starting out nice and mostly clear. Passing cloud cover here and there is going to be the main thing that you notice in the sky. Other than that, it's going to be an abundance of that deep blue color. And even going into Tuesday afternoon and evening, we don't see anything in the way of rain. Now, Wednesday is the day that we could see some of the rain chances slightly improve. I do have a rain chance for Wednesday as of right now, but it's going to be later in the day if we do see anything. And then you can see it's also going to be very scattered, very isolated, and very light in nature. All we see are a couple of green dots that could encompass some areas of central Georgia. I probably overshot the rain chance at about 20% for the later half of Wednesday. But overall, it's the biggest talking point that we have when we go across your short range forecast. It's really not looking like a very wet Wednesday whatsoever. And Thursday also not looking terribly wet as well. So when we don't have anything in the way of rain chances, the main talking points that we have are going to be the temperatures, the humidity, and winds if we do have any. And of course, we do have that breeze right now. We are going to continue to see it maybe fairly widespread. The farther south and southeast I think you live, you're going to notice the impacts a little bit more so. Gusts up to 20, maybe 22 miles per hour. Areas in like Cordele, Dublin, getting down into Vidalia, rather I should say. But then as we progress across the later afternoon into the evening hours, that breeze will become a little bit more tame. It won't be as gusty in nature, but it's still going to be a factor tomorrow morning. And as we go into tomorrow afternoon, just maybe an occasional gust up to 15 to 16 miles per hour. This is what I would classify more so as a slightly breezy afternoon. Today could be more so classified as gusty at times, and you definitely will notice the winds, especially in the early afternoon window. But then we'll steadily watch the winds subside. First things first, as we go into this evening and into tonight, we'll start to notice a downtick in those winds. And then tomorrow, still going to have your occasional gust or two, but by Wednesday morning, we should definitely see a lot more of a calmer breeze. So your Labor Day grillcast, like I said, try to keep those fires contained within the grill with the windy conditions that we do have. Other than that, you don't have anything weather-wise that's going to impact your grilling. So green spatulas all the way from this afternoon into this evening. If you have any Labor Day cookouts with friends and families, you are looking good to go. But in terms of traveling, today actually forecasted to be fairly light traffic according to the GDOT website. Now, I do believe we'll see more traffic than they're anticipating, just knowing that today is already the holiday that most of you get off of work. So many people are probably going to be heading back into town, especially during that afternoon to evening time window. So I would say Monday is probably going to be more so like tomorrow, which they have forecast for typical traffic, that moderate congestion between 3 and 7 p.m. But many people may have decided to take an extended weekend and take an extra day of PTO for Tuesday. Overall, I still think that you should expect your normal traffic today, but at least the morning hours, there have not been too many cars on the road whatsoever because you don't have as many people heading out to work. You don't have the kiddos that are heading into school today. So the morning has been quite a treat, but after we get past lunchtime and we start to get into the afternoon and evening time frame, I'm sure you'll start to see a lot more cars on the roads, and I'm sure the traffic is already picked up at Buc-ee's down in Fort Valley. So over the next 3 days, not many talking points Monday and Tuesday, just pleasant, pleasant, pleasant. But how about this? 58 for a low temperature on Tuesday. Now, you remember I was forecasting one morning that had 58 for a low as of last week, and we did hit that low of 58, and it was 1 degree above the record. So we're going to have to see if we start to flirt with any of the records as we go into tomorrow morning. But 84 for a high temperature, pretty similar afternoon, and I do believe that drier air is going to stay in the forecast. Going into Wednesday, 20% chance of a shower. It's just going to be a very stray and a very short-lived shower if you do see anything, and it's mainly going to be in the later half of Wednesday. But we will start to see a slight uptick day by day, so up to 60 degrees for a low on Wednesday. Obviously doesn't feel like much of a warm-up, but 86 in the afternoon will feel a little bit warmer than, say, this afternoon. So your afternoon highs, they don't stop there. How about 88 on Thursday into 91 by the time we get into Friday? That would be the first time we've seen a 90-degree mark since, I believe it was August 24th was the last time that we climbed into the low 90s. And back then, 91 was a temperature that was below average. But now you see this average low has dropped down to 90 degrees. It was at 91 degrees yesterday. So this technically would be an above average day, although it is going to be a pleasant forecast, because when we have a warming trend like this, it means we don't have much in the way of cloud cover or rain really limiting the warm up each and every afternoon. So it does look like we're going to remain mostly dry throughout this week. We'll see a downtick in that morning low from this morning into tomorrow. I do expect a good amount of areas to be in the upper 50s, and then we go into 60, 63, and up to 66 degrees by the time we start out Friday. Each of these mornings is going to feel quite amazing. It's just you're probably going to feel a bit more of the chill in the air Tuesday morning and getting into Wednesday morning, and a select few areas could go even below those temperatures, just given you have the suitable environment for it. But average low this time of year, 69 degrees. We are continuing to hover below average each and every day. So with the afternoon high temperatures increasing, you're going to want to know, okay, is the humidity going to influence those numbers any of those days? Well, I think Thursday is probably your best bet at least seeing a little bit of difference in the feels like numbers and the actual temperatures, maybe about a degree, 2 or 3 difference, but it's not going to really feel that much different because we continue to see the humidity hanging out at very bearable levels throughout Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's once the front actually comes through on Thursday that I'll show you on the long-range models in a second, that we do see a slight uptick in the moisture, but at least it's not into this very muggy category. That's where it would really start to influence the feels like numbers. But along with that, when you have an increase in humidity, you do get a slight uptick in the rain chances just because there's more moisture in the atmosphere to work with, and a front is a big mechanism of lift, so it would be lifting any moisture that we have at the surface. We just don't have that much available. So given that we have kind of that below average humidity day by day, still hovering in the decently humid range for Thursday, and basically as we go into the weekend, we see a slight downtick on Friday, so we will get slightly more drier air in the forecast for Friday. And then as we go into Saturday, another uptick because another frontal boundary looks to make its passage through central Georgia, and that should definitely result in at least some drier air as we go into the end of the weekend, but could it result in some cooler air as well? So picking up with the long-range models, this is not very impressive whatsoever, and this has remained the story all morning long amongst the long-range models. And as you can see, up to the north of us, there's very good agreement on widespread rain, even a couple of thunderstorms probably ahead of this frontal boundary, up into West Virginia, getting into North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. Down here, we just don't have as much moisture to work with, so it does look like we're just looking at some spotty and some scattered showers here and there. And then finally, as we go into Friday, it looks to be an afternoon without any rain chances whatsoever. This is still 4 days out, so we'll see if the long-range models still believe this, but I'm kind of very confident to believe this, to be honest, because we are going to see the insertion of that slightly drier air after the passage of that frontal boundary. It's not going to influence anything in the way of some cooler temperatures, but some drier air would definitely do good with at least limiting the rain chances, so you can head out to the gridiron and finally not have to bring that rain jacket, that rain poncho. It has been a very messy forecast for Football Friday night the last 2 weeks. But it has kept the temperatures cooler, so it is going to be on the warmer side for this week's Football Friday night. Now going into Saturday afternoon, you can see the European around 4 p.m. hinting at a couple of spotty showers, trying to organize in a bit of a linear shape. But then we go into the later hours, more so into the Saturday night, into early Sunday morning. And then the GFS right here is trying to hint that some rain is going to form here in central Georgia. So this is going to be our secondary front. This is going to be front number 2 that passes through. There's just not a lot of agreement on the timing of it whatsoever right now. If I had to guess, it would be in the later half of Saturday because we're already feeling the impacts of that drier air once we get into Sunday. But it does look like both models agree that this front may take its time getting through here. So we could see our fair share of widespread rain as we go into Sunday. But once again, this is 6 days out into the future. We'll continue to fine tune that as we get closer. But I would say your 2 best days of getting some rain, probably Thursday and probably Sunday when that front is actually looking to make its passage through a certain area. Then as we go into the beginning of the work week next week, so this is going out a week and even a couple more hours into the future, looks like cloudy skies do remain all over the southeast and maybe some rain chances creep close to us. We'll start to fine tune that once again as we get closer. But right now, we'll talk about the tropics too, because we have to continue to check in each and every day and make sure that there's no system out there that is getting its act together that could be heading in the near direction of us. Well, it's still this tropical wave that we have been talking about even late into last week. It didn't have very impressive chances of development and still not terribly impressive, but we have seen a steady uptick in the percentages over the next 7 days. 40% over the next 7 days, but there is 0% chance of this developing within the next 48 hours. But now we can actually get a good depiction of what they're picking out. So once they put this X on here, we can finally pick out what they're exactly pointing to. It is really just a widespread yellow shaded area hinting at something was going to form in this. But now we see the exact tropical wave right over here to the west of where that orange X did initially get forecasted for. So this wave is going to continue to move over to the west, maybe slightly up to the northwest, just south of the Cape Verde Islands. And then I imagine as it moves into this area, the chances for development will get a lot better. But as of right now, this is still going to be about a week and a half, 2 weeks out if it is going to have any implications in the eastern United States. And it is still way too early to tell if this is going to have an impact on us, let alone even get a name for the hurricane season. But the next name would be the G name. That would be Gabrielle, and that would be our 7th named storm of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. So your 7-day forecast will be highlighted by this uptick in the high temperatures each and every day. Slight chances of rain Wednesday and Thursday, but that's still kind of your best chance at rain as we have on the 7-day forecast. About a 10% chance of rain on Friday and Saturday as it does currently stand. It kind of remains to be seen how much that humidity will get a downtick. It still may be suitable enough for a couple of scattered sprinkles like what we may be looking at the forecast for Wednesday. And then I've gone and upped the rain chance to for Sunday up to about 20%. Like I said, it's still not set in stone whatsoever. And will we get some cooler air along with maybe some drier air as we go into the end of the weekend? It looks like the high temperature bumps down, but that could be because of widespread cloud cover and maybe some widespread rain chances. But we'll figure that out and kind of fine tune that forecast as we get closer. All in all, this is a pretty tame forecast for the first week of September. We're used to holding on to that heat and humidity for quite some time, but we will go ahead and look ahead to maybe some things that are coming up. Obviously Labor Day today on that first day of September. And then in just about 9 days, the official peak of the Atlantic hurricane season will be taking place around September 10th. This doesn't mean that the tropics are going to be full blown, but it does mean this is kind of historically the time of hurricane season where we typically see the most activity in terms of frequency of tropical storms and frequency of hurricanes. But right now, this hurricane season this year is really following along the lines of last year's. We had a pretty quiet month of August besides a named storm or two. And then we saw a very drastic uptick as we go into September. So obviously we need to pay very close attention until we get into the later half of October. Then hurricane season starts to slow down just a touch. But typically September and early October are pretty active on all time during their historical records. Then first official day of fall. So this is going to be the fall season, not meteorological fall. That will happen on September 22nd. And just a couple days after that, just about a week and a half after, the start of the fair. That will be on October 2nd, and that will also mark the beginning of fall break for many of you. So If you're watching this on the last day of your 3-day weekend as a student, you're dreading going back to school tomorrow, you get through the whole month of September, which is about 4 more weeks, and then you have some more relief, and you're going to have an extra long break for about a week, maybe even up to 10 days for your fall break. So something to look forward to, and I know all of you are looking forward to the start of the fair, and myself as well, because yes, it may be a little bit warm for parts of the fair, but typically once you get into the end of the fair, that's when the fall weather really starts to ensue. So thanks for tuning in to your extended forecast for this Labor Day Monday. We'll be back here at 10:30 once again tomorrow, breaking down everything you need to know and getting a better idea about those rain chances. Thanks for tuning in.